From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Good morning and thank you for watching Texas This Week. The state of Texas is giving billions of dollars in tax breaks to data centers, and a judge ruled against Texas after the state kicked women and minority-owned businesses out of the HUB program. More on those stories in just a minute, but first, let's get to the 3 things you need to know in Texas politics. Who's leading in the Republican runoff race for the U.S. Senate? Well, it depends on which poll you look at. A poll of likely Republican primary runoff voters by the Republican-leaning communications and research firm Coefficient shows incumbent U.S. Senator John Cornyn with a very slim lead over Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, 44% to 43%, with 13% undecided. But a Texas public opinion research poll has Paxton leading Cornyn by 8 points, 48% to 40%, with 11% undecided. A key takeaway from that poll, nearly 1 in 4 Cornyn supporters say if Paxton is the Republican nominee, they'll likely vote for the Democrat in the race. State Representative James Tallarico. And speaking of Tallarico, his campaign is reporting the Austin Democrat raised a record-breaking $27 million in the first 3 months of the year, more than any other Senate candidate in any state for the first quarter. Cornyn raised $9 million in the first quarter, Paxton $2 million. Governor Greg Abbott is threatening to take away $200 million in grants for the police departments in Austin, Dallas, and Houston. His office sent letters to leaders of those cities saying their policies don't fully enforce ICE administrative warrants, violating the grant contracts. The cities have until Thursday to respond. San Antonio Congressman Tony Gonzalez has resigned from the U.S. House of Representatives. His letter of resignation was submitted on the same day that a motion to expel him was filed. The Republican admitted to having an affair with a staffer who later committed suicide, and last week, another former staffer came forward saying he made sexual advances at her. On Monday, a Travis County judge temporarily reinstated the rules for the state's historically underutilized business program, or HUB. A group of businesses sued the state after acting comptroller Kelly Hancock changed the rules, excluding women and minority business owners from the program that was designed to help them. He made it a veteran-owned business program. Dallas State Senator Royce West co-authored the bill creating the HUB program. He joined me to talk about the ruling. You know, when the comptroller changed the rules for the program, he cited an order from the governor that was aimed at removing diversity, equity, and inclusion programs from state offices. Why do you say that reasoning just doesn't hold?
Well, the reason it doesn't hold, it goes all the way back to elementary school, okay? All of us, when we were younger, were told that there's 3 branches of government: the judicial branch, legislative, and executive. The only branch that can make law is the legislative branch of government. Not the governor, not the comptroller. It's the legislature. The only branch that can repeal law is the legislative branch of government, not the governor, not anyone in the executive branch of government. And that's exactly what happened here. So there's a larger question here, though. You know, we have separations of power, and our position is that the comptroller exceeded his authority, his constitutional authority, in repealing the law that was put in place some 35 years ago. Now, understand this, the legislature had an opportunity during the last legislative session in order to repeal this law. There was a robust discussion about it, and a decision was made not to repeal it.
You know, you've long had a relationship with now acting comptroller Kelly Hancock. In fact, the session that you were talking about with this robust discussion, he was there because he was still a state senator at the time. You know, did you have communication with him about the changes to the program?
I attempted to have communications with him, but Kelly would not return my call on this. The fact of the matter is, I tried to say, listen, let people that will be impacted with what you're trying to do have a meeting with you to kind of give you input into your decision-making process. There was no input at all. And I'm disappointed, but I mean, you know, it is what it is. And so we are in the court litigating it, and needless to say, it's being appealed. And I think that once the appellate court hears the debate, hears the arguments, that we're going to prevail on it.
Yeah, you mentioned that appeal, the comptroller's office planning to appeal, but tell us this, you know, when it comes to what happens now, that temporary injunction, it seems like it's sort of limited, and I feel like there's still a lot of questions about whether or not businesses need to reapply for the HUB program now. Are they going to be notified? Talk to us about, just in practical terms, what's going to happen between now and, when we get a decision from the courts.
I think that it would be wise for the comptroller's office to kind of read the writing on the wall and to begin sitting down with organizations to make certain we effectuate the decision of the district court. That decision was that the law goes back into effect. The law that was in effect the first part of December would be the law that goes back into effect. Now, if you look at that law, what it says is that, businesses can be certified. The comptroller has a responsibility to certify businesses. Now, the question becomes, since they decertified those businesses, that many of which had to pay a fee, how do they go back and make sure you recertify them? So they need to be thinking about that right now and working with those agencies or those different chambers of commerce to figure out exactly what's the best thing to do.
You wrote a story that is getting a lot of attention, and it's about the tax incentives the state is giving data centers. I want you to first talk to us about what exactly are these tax breaks?
Yeah, so this was a story that kind of caught my eye, looking at reports that the comptroller's office has on its sales and use tax incentives. And these are very common tax breaks that are done for various industries all across the state. But we have one that is specific for data centers. And I first started kind of looking at this when I was looking at the 2023 report versus the 2025 report, and noticed that there was an incredible jump in the size of the tax break in just those 2 years, from about $180 million annually to over $1 billion. And so that really caught my eye and was kind of a red flag, just seeing how quickly that's growing. I mean, there are other taxes that are large and about $1 billion annually, but none that are growing this quickly. And so where this growth is coming from is just the growth of artificial intelligence and the data center boom that I'm sure so many of your viewers have heard about in the past couple of years. This tax break, it exempts these data centers from paying sales taxes, and kind of the easiest way to explain it is if you picked up a data center and sort of just dumped it out, and kind of everything that would fall out that helps with the functioning of the data centers. So not necessarily like the office furniture, but you think of the servers, you think of the racks for the servers, you think of the microchips, and the big one, electricity use, which is one of the main things that data centers are using, and they don't have to pay this sales tax on electricity. So basically, as more and more of these data centers have come online, they've gotten larger, they've gotten more energy intensive, it has caused the value of this tax break to grow very quickly in the last 2 years. And so let's note just how much the tax break was in 2025 and what it's projected to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just over $1 billion in fiscal year 2025. This was just this last year that would have just ended. And over the next 2 years, it's expected to be about $3.2 billion, so roughly $1.6 billion a year. I think by 2030, it's going to be $1.8 billion. And the tax experts I've talked to, they see all of these numbers as probably likely underestimates, just considering the fact that the comptroller is relying on forecast data based on old data of how many data centers there are in the state. And with so many being built so quickly, those numbers just every day are getting more and more out of date. Yeah, and so if we take a step back, I think people say, okay, whoa. Why does a data center need a tax break in the first place? So this really dates back, decades. Yeah, about a decade and a half, 13 years almost. This was passed in the 2013 legislature. It was then State Representative Harvey Hildebrand who first authored the bill, and at this time this was a totally bipartisan bill. It really wasn't controversial. Data centers were an emerging industry, which is generally where these tax breaks are kind of targeted to, attracting growing industries. And the way you would think of a data center then is just smaller, less energy intensive, used for like cloud storage infrastructure, just kind of like the bones of the internet that make everything function. And it was a good deal back then. I mean, it was only about $4.5 million annually the first year that the tax break went into effect. We now have two special committees, right, who are looking into it in the interim. They didn't talk about the money, though, this big tax break during that first hearing with the House. You anticipate that that's going to be a conversation in the future? Yeah, so the Finance Committee is going to have a hearing toward the end of July, and that will be a key part of that. I don't know if your viewers would have heard this too, but Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, he highlighted this tax break in his interim charges for the Senate. So that's kind of where this hearing that's set for July is coming out of. But it is certainly something that not only legislators, state lawmakers are aware of, but also statewide officials like the Lieutenant Governor are looking at. And I think it's going to be a part of the conversation. It just hasn't happened yet.
You can find Paul's full story at texastribune.org. That's Texas This Week.